Welcome to the Caplander podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, Caplander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hello, and welcome to the Caplander podcast. It's our first solo episode of 2026.
Hi, Morgan. I love when we do our solo episodes because it gives us a chance to kibitz back and forth and talk a little bit about what we've been up to and some Morgan mom duo and Morgan Jody duo. So let's jump in.
We veer a little bit out of the work lane, but this is more the conversations that we have when you're running through the grocery store and I'm on the phone with you. I think this is more of the pieces where when people ask what it's like to work with a family member, these are parts of the conversations that are more behind the scenes.
Well, we try and put some formality around when we're talking work, and then some conversations are work, and then we say, okay, can we switch to personal? And then we go back to work. And sometimes one or the other of us says, I can't do this right now. But all in all, we tend to try and keep a little more structure so every conversation is not always about work.
All right, let's start with last week's episode we were in San Francisco. I guess now it's going to be 2 weeks ago by the time this comes out, and we kind of looked ahead at what was to come for the week and what the tone was going into the week of JP Morgan, the healthcare conference, and now coming out of it. What are your main takeaways, or what's your whole reflection from the week?
Well, let's start on the more fun front. And so we fly into a day or two before the conference starts. And having been from San Francisco, it's fun because we see friends and then we sort of get into the work lane starting on Sunday night. But I even would argue that the packing part is a big piece of it as well, because
Every time. Honestly, every single time. And I wrote this down because we were talking about it for packing and then shopping the high-low game. And how the high-low game and getting ready for trips like this, it all, like you see it all when you're looking at your closet trying to figure out what to bring.
well, when I'm shopping, I'm packing. So I never buy anything that won't fit into, especially if it's work oriented. I don't buy any. Miami's obviously a whole different narrative because you get dressed to go to the grocery store here, and women are. I mean, it's really something to see, especially like where I am in Coconut Grove, and these bougier areas. But anyhow, when I'm shopping, I'm packing in my head because I have made us only take carry on. God forbid we lose a suitcase. It's such a pain, and waiting for luggage can take an incredibly long time. So everything's got to go. So that being
When you
said,
say you say that you shop for packing, you're thinking for what's already plug and play
outfits.
to your
Yeah,
wardrobe,
outfit.
what you
Or if
have.
I buy something, it has to have levers. Like if I buy a suit, then ideally I can use, or if it comes with a skirt and pants, then I have flexibility. Or it has to go into a theme where I already have the purse and I have the shoes. Because buying the outfit, the whatever it is, a blazer we typically wear, and the pants is not even close to the outfit because it takes jewelry and it takes if there's a belt involved, and it definitely takes a purse, and it definitely takes a pair of shoes. And ideally, it's not some color that then doesn't fit into everything else you have. So yeah, it's a whole mindset.
So this is like for somebody who maybe is on the newer end of it, or even somebody who, I mean, we have a colleague who is looking at redoing their wardrobe now. If somebody's like, I'm starting from nowhere, what do you think the best investment pieces are? Like, what's worth spending the money on? And then where is it not as worth it to spend it?
Right. Well, this is what we talk about, the high-low game. So I like to buy good suits. I think the way the fabrics look and the tailoring are noticeable. And then, so I think it's worth spending money on that. And where I think it's worth like going a little bit lower is spending less on things that go with the suit, like the t-shirts, possibly a belt. I think you can mix real jewelry with fake jewelry. And I think all of that, and maybe a scarf, those things are flexible. But in general, the staple pieces are worth spending money on. Blazers, for sure. You can mix blazers then. A lot of this, like during JP Morgan, a lot of people are wearing jeans and then they're wearing like sneakers. So I think another thing to spend money on is sneakers that are either super comfortable, but they also have to be stylish.
Yeah, I think some of those ones, like the Loewe ones, I saw a lot of women wearing, especially the flatter ones, and I know you
Yeah.
have a couple pair of those. I also know because when we switched shoes in London, when I was wearing my heels, I got to wear them, and I've always loved the way they look, and I
You're
see them
lucky that
all
my
over.
foot has grown a half a size because now, God bless you, there are certain things in mine past my jewelry that you can actually fit into. So now that I'm hovering around, I'm like that in between. I used to be a 38, now I'm a 38 and a half, and then I'm hedging some places to a 39 in shoes. Like, what the fuck?
All right, so somebody's buying suits, somebody's buying shoes that are made sneakers, like, that you can actually wear. I know you've had some suits tailored so that you can wear the pants with sneakers, and
Yes,
then
at your
I
own,
also
right?
think
Because that's a good thing to know to talk about because how many people do we see where you realize if you're gonna wear your heels, you can't wear the same pair of pants. So that is definitely an art to go and have them tailored and made to be just long enough, but not too long that you can't switch in and out.
I think the tailoring piece is
Yeah.
actually really important because when you're talking about investing in clothes, especially a work wardrobe, I have, and I've learned this obviously from you, a lot of blazers. I like a little bit of a boxier blazer. I don't like something that's too tight, especially because I'd rather wear layers underneath it. So, the blazers that I have are definitely, they were never tailored, but they were on the boxier side. But I know there's a lot of women who are taller. And then finding the length of the pants, that's hard because you need something that's long enough. You don't want something that's too short. And you're not necessarily, I saw no ankles anywhere in the conference, like, nobody's wearing short pants at
No
all because you're
ankles, no ankles, no none of
right,
that.
right, there are no ankles out. You might see
Right,
somebody's foot or, like, the top of their foot from heels, but even in San Francisco in January, despite it being California, it wasn't necessarily warm. So, a lot of boots, the accessories are really good, like, a lot of the Hermes scarves, which I've bought. I have one, and I bought it secondhand consignment, which really
right.
is something
It's a good
that's
way,
like.
more affordable.
And I think that's part of it is that the hunt to find high-end items, it's so much more accessible now than what it's been in the past, especially because so many.
Secondhand stuff like the Hermes I think an Hermes scarf is always a staple, and I think it can be really worn with a leather jacket and cool, or it can be worn more conservative. I mean, we were at JP Morgan in New York. The woman had on, like, a very basic dress, and then she had an Hermes scarf around her shoulders, and we see a lot of this wrapped around a bag. All those things, I think for these conferences in general and work events, it is important. We see a lot of women. I know I'm wearing my Van Cleef right now. A lot of women, if you can afford it, buy these things and that you see them wearing the same things year after year, but it really does have a and I even had some guy come up to me at the Sophie Nova cocktail party who was like, "I love your jewelry." And
Yeah,
so and one of the
investment.
lawyers that I was talking to who's now like very coming from a more junior place in her law firm to a more senior, she asked me about clothing and what kinds of things she should be investing in. And I
Yeah.
said accessories are really easy for you because a backdrop of something more neutral, black, brown, the beiges are easy. And then you sort of zhuzh it up. And that's a great strategy to wind up this conversation for travel because it's a very easy way to pack.
Yeah.
Morgan, what are you wearing lately? Has something changed? Are you able to, or how's that going for you?
I actually really wanna talk about the promotion you're getting this year.
Yeah, so I have a change in title coming, and
Correct.
I am going to be a grandmother, and that directly relates to you, Morgan, because you are pregnant with your first child, and
I am.
congratulations to all of
Thank
us.
you.
It's really a blessing. In the Jewish religion, we call that a mitzvah. It's very exciting, and we're even more excited because it is a girl.
It's a girl!
I
Jody's
know.
thrilled because speaking of jewelry and accessories, Jody get all of Jody's stuff gets to stay in the bloodline,
Yeah,
straight down. I mean, so obviously it's my first child, it's my first pregnancy. There were a lot of things where I knew I wanted to get pregnant, like it was not a surprise for me at all. But I think there's been a lot of pieces of that along the road of getting here that nobody really tells you about. And I don't have an older sibling, so there was nobody who was like, "Hey, here's what you need to know." And I have a
right.
great doctor, which I'm grateful for. But a lot of things like I was prepping. Like when we went to Buffalo for the Bills game in October, I boarded the plane with a tray of homemade blondies. Like I basically was like, I'm going to plump myself up a couple of pounds and I'm
Like,
going
to
to
make it
make this
easy,
like
which is so
total.
anti the way that we usually go into these things, like, we were going to Buffalo for the game and then to New York for work. So, yes,
Yeah,
I
I was
noticed that you did that,
there.
and I have to say that while we were in Buffalo, I was sort of looking at you thinking, "Hmm," and then we
Well,
got to New York.
yeah, I said so, this is trailing to the like the San Francisco piece. When Jody and I travel for work together, we stay in the same hotel room or we stay in the same place and we're together. And I really felt once we left Buffalo and got to New York, I felt like my boobs were different. And then I was sitting in the
Morgan,
air. What? I'm allowed to say it.
not
They
only your
are.
boobs were different, but you were a little, like, ornery. You were you were just off your mark, and I can speak to this being your mother and your boss. There were several times where I was thinking, "What is with her?" And then it occurred to me
Well,
from looking at you, I was like, "She doesn't look quite the same." And then, I know this might
we were
sound
sitting
crazy.
in the airport. We were sitting in the
Let me
airport.
finish this part. When you were younger, when you were in high school, or maybe it was middle school, you had a sore throat. And I thought, she doesn't look the same. And your whole pH was off. And I took you to the doctor, and sure as shit, you had mono. And when we were
Correct.
in New York, and I stayed, of course, we stay in the same room. Well, we didn't actually in New York because we stayed at Colin's apartment, but we were together a lot. And I was like, she doesn't look exactly the same, and her pH is definitely NQR, not quite right. Like, you smell a little different. And then I looked at you in the airport and I was said to you, "I
wearing
really
I
think you're
wearing a
pregnant."
black Skims T-shirt, and I was sitting across we were sitting at the American Airlines lounge in the club, and you
Or
were
yeah.
looking at and you're looking down, you're looking up, you're looking down, you're looking up, and you were like, "Maybe you are pregnant." And I was like,
I
"I
said, "I
really."
think you're pregnant." And then soon
Yeah,
after, I said, "I think you're pregnant." And then you were, and I said to you, "I know it's a girl." And everyone else was telling you, "Looks like a boy." And I was like, "No, I know it's a girl because I know you well enough." And your whole everything had switched. So, yes, in fact, a girl. Well, it won't be a Thelander, but it'll be a Karasik, but nonetheless. So that's very exciting.
yes. So, baby girl is, we are in the 2nd trimester, which is exciting. I'm officially out, I think, God willing, of the nausea wave because that was very rough. I mean, I'm the type of person who can sit in the 3rd row of a car and read a book, and I will not feel an
Going
ounce.
sitting backwards even.
Correct. I could close my eyes and do so I mean, I could tell you I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've ever felt nauseous in any situation. And the morning sickness that came with in the 1st trimester, I have never felt like I was on a rockier boat than for those 7 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad
Completely.
that's passed. People always ask you how long you're taking off after the baby, and I was like, "An hour," because then you
Yeah.
gotta get back to work. I'm only half joking in that I think you're going to want to keep your eye on the business piece. I think it'll help you keep your sanity, and let's face it, Morgan, you're
Michelle
young and in.
Obama talks about this. Michelle Obama, I listened to her on the Call Her Daddy podcast, and she talks about how women essentially pause mothers in particular have a tendency to pause their lives and then their kids leave. And they're all of a sudden they're like, what's left for me because I invested so much of myself. I put so many of my own interests aside to raise kids or one kid or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden the kids walk out the door and she's like, they don't turn around and go, like they walk out and they're looking one direction. And
Yeah.
she's like, it's such a reminder to make sure that you do maintain your own independence
For
to a
what you
degree.
want, and I think you're very obviously good at what you do, and you have a illustrious career, and fortunately, you are blessed with a very, flexible schedule and no having to be in an office, so you really have the best of both worlds, and you'll be able to flex your time, which sort of brings me to the next topic that I think would be fun to talk about, which is we had our 18th annual women's event during the JP Morgan Healthcare
Totally.
Conference, and it really goes to you being pregnant because we had so many thank you notes from people, and everyone touched upon you being pregnant and how exciting that is. But we had about 400 women who were RSVP'd and almost 350 women who showed up for our event, and we've been doing this, as I said, for 18 years, and it's always the Monday night at JP Morgan, and it's so great because these are women executives and venture capitalists, and of the executives, they are board members and CEOs and chief medical officers, And really, the conversation is all about deals and business and compensation and, what kind of creams we're using for our face and how our kids are and how our personal lives are. And it's just
Yeah.
a perfect homage to how women who are smart do juggle and get it all done.
Yeah. One of the other co-hosts for the evening, it was Michelle Park, who's a partner at NEA, which is
You
a
don't. You
prestigious.
should listen to her. She's been on our Kaplander podcast.
She has been, and her episode is great. I mean, she's a bench scientist. She's an extremely successful investor, and she really talked about the women who have led and have had successful exits with companies. And then we also shared compensation data by gender and looking at CEO versus for male and female for life science companies, because with the healthcare conference, it's all life science focused. You can find those data tables. We won't read the numbers now, but all of those data tables are on our corporate LinkedIn page. So if you are curious to see them, you can. But
But
I really,
basically, it showed that
yeah,
women are comparable at the median, but at the 75th percentile, it's almost unanimously
and the
men make
maximum.
more. Yeah, and the
And
maximum.
it's not a little bit more. It's substantial, and it's a substantial amount of money. I think for the managing general partner, which is the top position on a venture firm, it was a difference of two more than $2 million.
Yeah. Well, women have to push, but that's part of the deal is that when women push, then um, we can be, people use the word she's such a bitch, or we seem to be overbearing in some way. But when men push, that is attaboy. And I stand by it because, at my age and stage of the game, I've heard it all. And now I really don't care because I know that it's reasonable to ask for what is what you feel comfortable with and what's market, and even to push a little bit. And that has
Yeah.
now become the message, and we've heard from many women who were there that they really appreciate hearing that, and it's crazy to me because I don't know if you've met my mother, that's been sort of how I was raised, and Morgan, you raised this way too. And I know you're gonna do the same with your daughter, but you have to teach a mindset of this is what is reasonable, and you have to be comfortable to push for the higher numbers and the higher equity. And we saw it, as you said, on the investment firm side, and the numbers start to get bigger and bigger as you move into the people that are more senior. It's crazy, and it really shouldn't. So
No, well, it's also there's a compensation difference, especially at the higher percentiles, but then what's really stands out, the sheer amount of men compared to women. How many more men there are in these higher up positions. At the as you go down farther down the line and you look at the staff level, or if you look at the analysts or the associates, or you look at more entry level people, it's really, and this is part of like the motherhood conversation, right? Is that when women have kids, there's a lot of people who, as you said, Jody, I'm in a lucky position or a fortunate position because I do have flexibility. I don't go to an office. And part of that is that, okay, you still have help, yes, but there's a lot of women who can't afford to have help. It actually makes more sense from an economical standpoint for them to be at home than it is for them to go to work and then pay 70% of their salary towards daycare or help or whatever it is at home.
well, I do think where, the private markets and also working in a venture firm, that's not for the faint of heart. These are women who really have to have some kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and they're really interested in being successful. And it's not for everybody because it does take a certain stamina, and you can't be scared, and you really have to be able to persevere when things are tough. And it's different. Some would argue that it's easier and some would argue that it's harder. I mean, I could never work for anybody, but it depends on your angle on it and whether that's better for you or having a more traditional job. But from JP Morgan, we saw a lot of people who are doing a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah. I think that covers the JP Morgan piece of it. It's a great week. It's a great conference. It's a nice way to see everybody and kind of there was a lot of good momentum, I think, that left the week going into the rest of the year. And then I actually had questions that came from friends of mine who listen to the podcast more towards you, Jody, because you are pretty iconic in the sense that you are very fabulous. And a lot of the questions that I get, and I think you could feed into this a little bit more too, is talking about what you have done to age well, and then also what you do to take care of yourself. Because obviously you look phenomenal, and that is not just by you sitting on the couch eating popcorn and watching TV.
Well, first of all, thank you, and thank you to your friends. And I will say that we did notice this at our cocktail party that overall, a lot of these women really look great because they are smart. They are in the life science space, and they do have enough compensation that they're able to, I think, afford and make choices that they want to make for their health and well-being. And it's also a mindset. And we did not see, completely counter to what I see here in Miami, anybody with the fake rear end and the full, blown lips and all of that. So
Right.
I think it is sort of a mindset. So for me, at 60 years old, I've been really careful with the exercise. And funny enough, we were at the General Catalyst cocktail party during J.P. Morgan, and we spoke to an executive at a company called Nourish, which is a nutrition company. And I actually signed up and put in my insurance information and had a call with a Nourish nutritionist yesterday. And I realized, because we were talking about swimming, and I swim for most of my exercise like 5 times a week, former runner, and I, pretty much get in the pool. And she said she thinks of swimming as a moving meditation. That's sort of her version of yoga. And I think it's sort of my get out of jail card, because if I didn't swim, I might end up in jail for, I don't know, physically doing something somewhere that might be disruptive, because I move at a pretty fast pace. So the swimming really helps me stay calm. And then Pilates on a regular basis, I would say that's also a solid 5 or 6 times a week. I try to get the walking in, the 10,000 steps. I have cut down on my champagne intake, because despite my annoyance at everybody saying that it's, less is more, it probably is true, especially as we get older. And then with your help, I know you're laughing because it's true. And then with your help, I have also done a lot with the hydrofacials and making sure. Actually, I've done the high low game there too, because my mom always tells me that she thinks the best cream for under your eyes is Vaseline. And I would kind of agree with that. And then that I've bought some like really inexpensive oils and some other things along the way for my face. And I glop on. My hair is definitely a point, I think, of where I put in a lot of time and resources. So I use rosemary oil, which I think is a great, again, inexpensive way to keep volume in your hair healthy. So those are
Okay.
and let's face it, it's a happy life. And you and your brother and having my parents around and all of that really does help keep things very happy. And that happiness is a big secret too.
I mean, my non-negotiables have really been I incorporated strength training a couple of years ago, like 2, 3 times a week. Really 3 times a week is my ideal number, and I sprinkle in I'm a cardio person, and I think the cardio piece for me has been really important, even though people are like, "You don't really need it," or whatever it is, like, I personally need it. And I get
We
on
need
my
it for your
Peloton bike.
mental as well,
Yeah.
because if you don't cardio, you feel like somewhat of a caged animal and underutilized. Like, I think we're more capable and have more energy when we actually are doing cardio. That's for you and me.
Yeah, I mean, I get on my Peloton bike and I pedal like somebody's chasing me. Like I go balls to the wall hard because for me, I'm like, I don't need someone to be like walking and talking or whatever. It's the walking for me. I'm like, that's just like what you said, a non-negotiable. That's just a part of the daily movement. But some of the more intense things have been critical.
Are they harder now that you're pregnant?
I am humbled completely. I've
Wait
been
wait till you're really a full-on mother when the baby's out, and you'll be humbled. Now, maybe you won't give me so much shit all the time when I say, "That's not the way you talk to your mother. I require respect," and you're sort of mouthing me behind the scenes, right? Mimicking my words, and the truth of it is you just wait.
Oh, I'm sure I'm gonna have it all in for me. I mean, I'm this like if you and I are very different personality wise, and I follow more of my grandmother and your mother. So I have like a little piece of me where I'm like, ooh, what is this personality gonna come out? Because I saw
You
when the
can already tell
ultrasound.
she's taking hold of you,
Oh,
so
she's sitting when I saw her on the ultrasound 2 weeks ago, and she's there, her hands are up here and the feet
yeah,
are
she's
close,
coming
and
for you.
I'm
Good.
like, "You look really way too comfortable in whatever role you're stepping into." So, with that, I think, is there anything else we need to wrap up with besides your promotion?
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing about our week when we were there, and that we also saw a couple of our advisors. And I think on the forefront with us, we do have a lot of exciting things for 2026, not the least of which, of course, is you having a daughter, which is going to be so great. And it just shows you all what the opportunities that life brings. But on the business front, I think it's also really focused us, because we did hear at the past couple of years for everybody, not just in
Yeah,
life sciences and not just in the private markets. We've heard it from everybody that it was
yeah.
trickier. and that it was more challenging. So I do want to acknowledge that, especially for those of you who are listening who hear us so excited and positive. We've towed the party line the whole time because for us, there's no other way. But I really am seeing this year bright and for a future in many directions, not the least of which is a growing family. But I think that's representative of sort of the tree of life that includes the Thelander business and Complander and Caplander. And we wish all of you out there a lot of success for 2026 and to stay the course because we have a lot of good things to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well said, Jody.